Good morning. Welcome back to the Lost Forgotten channel. Tatsuki and Yumichika are seemingly getting along much better since we last ended the stream. We're going to be maybe listening to some news. Maybe if some different people are here, we might review the Macna video again. And other than that, we're just going to be watching this ongoing process of the bonding of two rather expensive, very rare, lovely, beautiful, awesome, just crazy high quality clownfish. One from ORA and one from Sustainable Aquatics, I think. But this new male I got was a display fish at Magna. So I think I had a pretty good score bringing him home. So anyways, stay tuned. We'll be back shortly, or I'll be back shortly. You know, what people on fake TV say. Fish tank people and other associated freaks. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Today I am still in extreme amounts of pain. I'm not quite sure what caused my back to completely get thrown out, but I'd like to thank my wonderful wife for after she sent me to bed last night, and after we ended the live stream, she kept the computer on with the webcam on the fish to make sure our new little guy was okay. So, and it looks like he's doing pretty good. He's up at the surface being a clownfish now. It's different from when he was hanging vertically and looking kind of sad and breathing heavy. His breathing is still not quite where I want it to be, but I can definitely see signs of progress. But he's been chasing after pellets, and you know, some clownfish just hang up on the surface for the fun of it. Okay, so that and when they look like they're, you know, splashing sideways and just kind of hanging out up there, and they don't look like they're dazed or hanging vertical and then compensating, they're usually just fine. I've got plenty of clownfish that just hang out at the surface mainly to beg for food. So I'm gonna go over there and drop some food on there and show y'all how good he's been eating. Good morning, Ellie, and good morning, Maximo. So there's a whole bunch of plankton and copepods and stuff like that, and he can pretty much, any fish in my system can pretty much survive off of just the level of plankton that I have. So he's been up there at the surface eating at the copepods and the rotifers in my system. But a little while ago he was tearing up the pellets, and it looks like he's going after them again. I didn't see him eat one again. Yep, just swimming around being a fish now. His breathing is probably half the rate it was yesterday. And they've been in close proximity to each other, getting along that well all morning since I woke up. Woke up about 4 o'clock. She's so hilarious. She'll go up and whack the food with her tail sometimes and knock it down into the water column, and then only like eat one of them and just watch the rest of them fall. I have Narcillus snails in my big old oregonite bed right there. So pretty much any uneaten food winds up getting eaten once the lights go off. yesterday when I fed that mysis and brine, snails didn't care. They just came right out. Okay, now that wasn't supposed to happen this early. All right, hold on. Oh, yeah.
Morning.
So, the light I have on that bottom tank is the Chinese Aquanite, which is basically made in the same factory that Core Life makes its cheap Aqualight S's at. But while it uses some similar boards and bulbs, its control interface is a little less high quality. So I go and I just hit the down arrow on the white light yesterday to dim the, or day before yesterday, to dim it a little for the new guy, you know, dim the lights, less stress on a new fish. But for some reason, the down white light arrow reset the timers on my current USA marine orbit lights. Ooh. Totsky will be plenty impressed once he's healthy. That's like, I picked, instead of the prettiest fish, the one that I thought was worth the most money, I picked the one that I thought she would like the most. And I mean, even though he hasn't been very viable looking, he's been kind of, you know, struggling. She hasn't seen him as weak. Oh, look at that.
That's so funny. You see both Maximo and Emily said hey, and look how many it says are watching.
Right. Oh, and when it had 3, it showed 3 watching. When Maximo started chatting, it went down to 2, and then when Emily started chatting, it went down to 1.
Oh, shit. I love short work weeks, but I hate short work weeks. I love it because it means only 4 days of working, and then it's the weekend again. But then again, that's extra work each day that I gotta get done because I missed a day being able to type documents. Go Holland! At least Lila's room is clean. It's still clean, right? I don't have to kill her. When I come home tonight, like her room's still clean. 7 hours, it's still clean.
Yeah, they're definitely getting along better. They were up there waiting for food together. That's always a good sign.
Oh, good morning, Miss Mai.
Mai has come out of her pot. Hello.
Tiger lady. Hey, Chum Chum, what you doing?
I kind of messed up resetting the timers on the top tank. I wound up at 6 a.m. like, wait a minute. I don't think the blue lights need to be turning on just yet. 6 a.m.? No. I mean, I enjoy looking at them that early, but 6 a.m. is a little too early. You want to feed Townsky again? She's up there begging.
We were giving them their air grow.
Oh, whatever. Give some of that flake food for her. Dairy Day.
What?
It's Tuesday. It's Dairy Day. Oh. Yes. I didn't see any of my old dairy vendor friends when we went and visited my old work down in New Orleans. But I saw the bunny bread guy. And he almost kind of remembered me. It was cool.
We saw this one too.
No, he remembered me. I just give him a hard time every time I see him. I've seen him many times since I worked at Bromart. Drawing day. A small winter-proof garden house. Huh. Really, the evolution of fake news over a 500-year period? Hold up.
And see one institution after another institution failing Americans.
Yeah, you can see meltdown after meltdown. I guess you could call it. On Capitol Hill, Congress has particularly changed, I think, and really one thing that's happened there is that nobody controls anybody. And they're all freelancers now. They got rid of the seniority system. They got rid of earmarks. So they thus got rid of both the carrots and the sticks that leadership used to use to keep Congress in line. So you look at the legislative agenda over the next month, for example, and you wonder how they possibly get that done. Now, 30, 40 years ago, they would get it done because the Speaker of the House and the Senate Majority Leader would say it's going to be this way, and it would basically be that way. And if you didn't vote the way they wanted, you'd be punished. Nobody can punish anybody now, and so they're just all over the map. They answer their constituents, and their constituents are in these gerrymandered districts that encourage them to be bold and to be, not to compromise.
And with that in mind, to Kurt's point, Ruth Marcus, if Trump is a charlatan taking advantage of people's dreams and wishes and desires, we've got a Republican Party that appears to be blown up or blowing up. We have a Democratic Party that appears to be leaderless and non-existent. And we're on the brink of war. Where does this go?
I think it's a very scary moment, and this is going to be a month, I think, that's going to give us some sense of whether we can kind of, as a country, get it together on a couple different levels. Can Congress do the very fundamentals of its job, not manage to do what Congress has not managed to do for 10 years and deal with immigration reform, but simply get the budget done, fund the government, avoid the debt ceiling, which is, the sort of dumbest self-inflicted crisis. So that's this huge thing on Congress's agenda. In the end, they will probably limp their way through all of this, but it's a question of how damaging it'll be along the way. And then from the point of view of the president's agenda, the crisis with North Korea and how that has ramped up. It was going to be a crisis, as people said earlier in the show, that was going to face whoever was going to be the 45th president. But how is this president going to deal with it? And so we have all of our institutions really on trial right now.
Kurt, we've said many times on this show over the last 7 months that the president obviously was duly elected by the Electoral College, but has been thwarted by the institutions.
Not the people.
In other words, the institutions have stood up to the president, whether it's the courts, whether it's Congress, even a special prosecutor, Bob Mueller now, judiciary committees in the Senate and the House. What's the best possible outcome in your mind of this first Trump term, or this only Trump term, depending on what happens? Can things change? Is the system held in the way that you expected it to?
Well, the best possible outcome is, for starters, we avoid World War III, I guess, this week.
It's important.
I have been impressed by not so much the Congress standing up, but certainly the judiciary, and I think from the get-go, the institutions have not caved. Whether they've stood up as forthrightly as they should is another question. The other thing, as I listen to all this, there's the institutions of Congress, of Washington, Trump, and all that. Another thing that he embodies, and that has been made it hard for everybody, including you guys and us guys, to deal with from the beginning is he is a show business performer. That's one of the themes of my book, is that entertainment, everything in America becomes show business. Donald Trump, and that started with presidents from John F. Kennedy through Ronald Reagan through Bill Clinton. But Trump took it a whole quantum leap further, and that's what makes it so hard to come to grips with who he is and how he governs, because he's the I don't know, what is he, insult comic that goes directly to his 33% base and gets them to...
He's a latter-day Trump.
Triumph versus Trump would be a great moment. Yes, exactly right. So he's still, again, I think it can be contained, the worst aspects of Trumpism, but as I say, we're not going to be done with what brought him to us. He's not the problem. He was kind of an ultimate symptom of my fantasy.
I totally agree with you. That's
Bye, guys.
where it came from. Kurt Anderson, thank you so much. Kurt's new book, Fantasyland, How America Went Haywire, a 500-year history, is out today. We all should read it. Eugene Robinson, Ruth Marcus, thank you both. Ruth will be reading your op-ed on the deal Trump wanted with Russia in today's Washington Post. And still ahead, Richard Engel joins us live from Seoul on the nuclear threat from North Korea. Plus, Senator Ed Markey from the Foreign Relations Committee
flying for the CIA. Holy shit.
You are airline pilots. That's how you support this family.
This could be good for us. Please don't include the true story. We need you to deliver stuff for us. Just don't get caught.
Of the CIA's biggest secret.
They helped build an army, defend a country, and create the biggest drug cartel this world has ever seen.
That sounds made up, Barry.
Stop now if you want. It gets crazy from here.
American made. Rated R.
Crohn's disease.
You're more than just a bathroom disease.
You're a life of unpredictable symptoms. Crohn's. You've tried to own us.
But now it's our turn to take control. Stelara.
Stelara works differently for adults with moderately to severely active Crohn's disease. Studies show relief and remission with dosing every 8 weeks.
Stelara may lower the ability of your immune system to fight infections and may increase your risk of infections and cancer. Some serious infections require hospitalization. Before treatment, get tested for tuberculosis. Before or during treatment, always tell your doctor if you think you have an infection or have flu-like symptoms or sores, have had cancer, or develop any new skin growth, or if anyone in your house needs or recently had a vaccine. Alert your doctor of new or worsening problems, including headaches, seizures, confusion, and vision problems. These may be signs of a rare, potentially fatal brain condition. Some serious allergic reactions can occur. Do not take Stelara if you are allergic to any of its ingredients. We're fed up with your unpredictability.
Remission can start with Stelara. Talk to your doctor today. Janssen wants to help you explore cost-effective options for Stelara.
It's time for the biggest sale of the year with the new Sleep Number 360 Smart Bed. It senses and automatically adjusts on both sides. The new 360 Smart Bed is part of our biggest sale of the year where all beds are on sale. And right now, the Sleep Number Queen.
Okay, that's annoying. Always makes me happy I don't watch live cable TV anymore. Having to sit through commercials for shit that I'll never be able to afford or otherwise have no interest in. Kind of annoying. Speaking of being able to afford things, I was just pestering my wife about trying to get the picture of the business plan over to her boss's husband. Because I think if she would just tell this guy about it, that he would kind of jump on it as far as investment opportunities go. Because not only is it right up his alley for what he already does, and it's closer. It would be closer. You know, he wouldn't have to commute across town every day. But it's just a foolproof business plan. I know, like, it's dangerous to say a business plan is foolproof, but I even have backup plans for if I fail as a mariculturalist. And as far as foolproof goes, you're kind of looking at it right there. Those two fish, once they are spawning and producing, in addition to my other two pairs, and Maya's really starting to act like she wants to lay some eggs. I just don't think I have their. I don't think I have where they are just right yet. But, you know, basically after a year, I will be able to sell 100 fish per month, both in-store, online, and wholesale. And those fish right there in front of you in store would go for 150 to 180. Totski's worth 150. She's a lower grade, but she's a larger size. And Yumachika, well, that's a grade 8 fish right there. Probably one of the prettiest examples of an Onyx Picasso I've ever seen. And two of the other prettiest examples are still up at that store, and I want to go get them. And basically what you do, or what I'm planning on doing, is using true Percula sails, because true Perculas, there's just less of them on the market. Okay, just overall there's less of them on the market. There's more sellers on the market because they're easier to breed. So I'm going to use my true Percula sails to help fund through, you know, supplies and feed, being able to keep that stuff running, to make money, will allow me to keep other experiments running, including angelfish and surgeonfish, which I've been wanting to breed marine fish my whole life, and like I have momentum building up with luck of broodstock selection. Like anybody can go and look online and order. You might have to wait a while, but you can order a pair of premium Picasso Onyx Perculas. But they're going to look almost exactly alike for a reason, because they had the same parents. Those two fish we're looking at don't have the same parents. That's why their patterning is so different. But what makes Totski such a high quality fish is how much black is on her. As far as Onyx Perculas go, that's a pretty amazing amount of black. And the reason why I chose the mate that I chose for her is not only because he looked like the one she would like the most, because he kind of like looks like her, right? But he also had the black cheeks. You know, she just has black in front of her front stripe, which is really good. That's really good for an Onyx, okay? But his black goes all the way up onto his cheeks and kind of even affects his eye coloration, and it looks really badass. And that's why I chose him, because I know their combined DNA should emphasize the black marking of the Onyx Percula. And of course, I think his white has a little too much coverage, but I love the intricacy of it. And her white has a little too little coverage, but has a great zigzaggy kind of pattern. And I think mixing them two together will make a nice variation of degrees of patterning. And you know, people don't want the same clownfish. They want unique clownfish. And Bubbles and Zoom were disparatously colored. Like one was Indonesian, one was Solomon Islands. And ORA still willing to take credit for them, but that wasn't surprising. But I still see Quality Marine sells mated pairs of wild-caught true Perculas. And I know Rick did business with them. So I don't know who they came from, but I've had great variation in their offspring. And not too many deformities. I say deformities just happen at random, but the Solomon Islands is where the Picasso gene comes from. And what I'm starting to notice on Zoom that explains like why the babies all look like they do is Zoom is apparently part Picasso. He's got almost completely normal looking stripes, only on one side he's got the middle stripe has a backwards peak to it. And I would have never noticed that if it weren't for the babies coming out that way. Coming out all Picasso and randomly crazy looking. But regardless, Bubbles and Zoom have given me a great variation of fish. I mean, I got ones with Picasso patterning and spots, and I got a unicorn, I got a lightning, I got and now I think if I follow that same logic of introducing two similar fish, they look alike so they'll get along real well and spawn frequently, but they're from different areas or different sources, in this case different aquaculture facilities. While these could be loosely related somewhere up the line, their lines have been separate for quite some time, so crossing them should produce very, very healthy and nice variations on the offspring. Yeah, I have one with a spot. One of my true Percula babies has a spot right on his head. Just a little circle. Just a perfect little circle spot. It's adorable. And then the lightning one, I call it a lightning because it's got this smudged blemish, like its center stripe kind of looks like it's being electrocuted. Since I started calling it a lightning, they discovered Perculas called nebula Perculas. And it seems that it's a similar effect, similar effect to what they described the nebula Perculas as is what's occurring on his middle stripe. Yeah, that was almost a sentence. It was similar to a sentence. So, the clownfish I will have for sale will be a variation, like a spectrum of variation. A spectrum of variation on true Perculas, the orange ones, like all the different babies y'all have been seeing. And then I'll have black Perculas, all Picasso and different variations on that. And then I have Mai and Gaius, which are just going to be giant Accelerus. She's half maroon, half Accelerus, so she's just huge. And Gaius, I need to take a new video of Gaius, because for just a little $15 clownfish, he turned out gorgeous. I mean, like, you don't often see that much black markings on an Accelerus without them turning brown. But he's got a little bit of brown on the top half, and his bottom half has retained complete orangeness. And then this black stripe goes all the way down his middle section. So one of the things I like about Mai is how orange sheets stayed instead of turning black or brown like some Mai Tais wind up doing. The wild Mai Tais do. Because there have been Mai Tais in the wild. And that's an Accelerus and a maroon. Generally when it's caught from the wild it's called a Mai Tai. But ORA Maroon X Accelerus is what I think Mai is. But to the best of my understanding, an Accelerune is when the female is the maroon, and a Mai Tai is when the female is an Accelerus. So that's why she looks more like an Accelerus. And if you see the Accelerunes, they're very reddish. Like they still look more like maroon in coloration. But she just looks like a giant Accelerus with straight vertical stripes instead of the usual Percula or Accelerus middle stripe. And one of the most striking things about her is how the maroon and the Accelerus fin markings have combined to give her those black edge sail fins. And it seems to me that mixing her with Gaius, this extremely black marked Accelerus, regular Accelerus from a batch of mixed Da Vinci's, like basically Da Vinci's that didn't come out very Da Vinci, but there were a couple of them that were slightly Da Vinci. So he's got all kinds of genetic potential. And I think at the very least his black markings are going to cause the offspring to have very pronounced black sail fin edges. And it's just going to be pretty. Ah. Yeah, only, you know, you don't usually shit yourself when you fail to make a sentence. If you fail to win a court case, you know, but not so much when you just fail to complete a sentence or compose a sentence properly in your head before saying it. But, you know, there was that one time. And that was 5 minutes ago. Wait, what? In my pants. Oh, no, okay. I need to start feeding those anemones more in the top tank. That rose bubble that's just been chilling in that one spot and soaking up the rays, it's fine. It's growing. It's wonderful. It's got plenty of zooxanthellae. All the rest of them came to me partly bleached. They're beautiful. I mean, they're absolutely beautiful. But, they still seem to me to be shrinking between feedings just a little bit. Like they'll grow a little bit, then they'll shrink a little bit. So I need to increase their feedings because I want them to grow. But at the very least, while they retain the same size, they have a better chance of spreading their zooxanthellae better. So the zooxanthellae is that microalgae inside the surface of the coral or anemone that produces the energy for the anemone to survive. And when they're bleached, they don't have much left. So a smaller size makes it easier for that amount of zooxanthellae before it can reproduce more to produce enough energy for them to survive. finite energy, less, less of a body to produce for. And that's why in the wild, it's really unknown how long anemones live. They could basically be immortal, okay, depending on their environment. The Ritterise, people have done some comparative age analysis among different Ritterise and found that some should be about 400 years old. And they can grow up to 4 feet wide in the wild, but you can find an extremely ancient anemone that has asexually divided itself, and like if you trace back like the original version of that anemone, that was 400 years ago. And depending on how much food they have, how much, how healthy they are, whether they're growing or contracting, an anemone can live indefinitely and be about the same size it was 100 years ago and looks no different. The perceived age of the base of an anemone is actually more determined on whether or not it's been high enough on rocks to spend a couple hours out of the day above water. An anemone in a tidal situation will learn to basically contract itself yeah, there's a lot of secrets to a lot of different diseases and everything else in the ocean, and we're going to kill it all off before we discover it. Rainforest ain't got shit on the barrier reef, okay? There's every type of photosynthesis you can find in a rainforest and more. And what you find is a prevalence of alkaline biocompounds that are conducive to use in the human body because they survive well chemically in salt water. And the more biological compounds are resistant to the parasites that we would normally ingest, being as we ingest freshwater stuff. Okay, so you're not going to have microbes going to town on something and causing a secondary infection from something that you pull from the ocean, because that develops an environment that is completely toxic to those kind of microbes. So it's basically about, it's strong enough for land, but pH balanced just for your bloodstream. Yeah. Now that one is a good fucking play on words. I don't know what it is. I'd toot my own horn, but I might shit myself. What? Anyway, I need to fix the camera, but I don't want to get up because I'm still in pain. I had to fucking end the broadcast. Like, my wife and my oldest made me end the broadcast. They're like, they told me I was getting pale. I'm like, really? Oh, stupid mortal body. Is the printer on a network or is it local? You're gonna tell me you got a printer problem. I'll troubleshoot the shit. Like reflex. Was it working previously? You have the appropriate drivers on the local machine that you're using? Do you have a router that's provided through your cable company, so it's a modem and a router in one? Or do you have a modem that's separate from your local network router? And if so, do you still have the same local network router? Okay. After installing it, did you shut down all the computers and reset the whole network once everything had found itself? Oftentimes a good total shutdown of all the computers and the modem and the router, once they've all discovered each other the first time, that'll allow the printers to discover each other. And basically it's a glitch in the startup process. It learns about the network, but it doesn't enable the printer sharing yet. Also, when you connected to a new network, did you select work or home? Okay, so you might have connected to the network differently when you did. So you can go into the network settings and make sure file and printer sharing is turned on for both your computer and the computer that the printer's hooked up to over the network. So make sure those things are enabled, then shut everything down. Make sure it's all in the same work group too. MS Home, or if you change the name. And if it's a network standalone printer, often it'll have a way you can enter the name of the network domain into the printer, so you can actually join MS Home on the printer. And if it lets you do that, then it's required to do that. But first thing first would be to check, make sure the connection to the network is the same. Enabled file and printer sharing. Okay. Then shut everything down, power it all back up. Starting with the router and then the computer that has the printer plugged into it. Or whatever your primary system is, primary server. what happens is oftentimes when you change a network, new Windows will pick up the new network, right? And then it'll tell you, how do you want to log in? And a little window pops up. And sometimes if you choose a different thing than you were on before, it's not so good. It depends on the version of Windows, whether or not home or work will enable automatically enable file and print sharing. Home does on some computers, work doesn't. So you can have Home Edition Windows on one computer and Professional Edition computer on the other. And the work won't share, the home version won't share on the work network, but the professional one will. So then two different versions of Windows, you think you're selecting the same setting, and it doesn't turn out to be the same setting. I tell you what, it's been probably a good 10 years now that it's been the case for 10 years now that if Microsoft would hire me as a consultant to design the GUI for Windows and the selection of services to coincide with a comprehensive marketing strategy, they would have much happier customers and be selling much better. Like, okay, for instance, Microsoft phone applications, or their phone operating system. I can put into perspective a solution that will make you understand what they need to do, what they should have done retroactively with Windows. Okay? It's quite simple. Instead of making Microsoft Windows Phone, you make Microsoft Windows Work Phone, Microsoft Windows Play Phone, Microsoft Windows Geek Phone, Microsoft Windows Tech Phone. Cater a select group of services to individuals who have certain needs. Microsoft Media Phone, Microsoft Vlogger Phone, and release those operating systems with a piece of hardware and encourage other hardware manufacturers to make a phone specific for those applications. Like, for instance, Microsoft Geek Phone with the slide keyboard with the arrow keys on it, specifically made for that kind of phone. Anybody wants to use that version of the operating system, and it's going to be one that can do more things. This is going to be like what Microsoft Windows is now, just with more shit than you could ever fucking need on it. Be fine for the Geek Phone, but keep the stupid fucking Instagram and just the bloatware stuff off the geek phone, you know? Like, you play phone, get game oriented. If it doesn't help you game, it doesn't come on the phone. It's not preloaded, not pre-installed. You know, the ability to route into your work network, and it's just a strict gaming phone. Okay? Work phone. Keep all the games and bullshit off of it. Just keep all the options to have games and shit off of there. Strictly security programs. Limited pathways in and out of the phone. And it's for email. It's for voice conferencing, video conferencing. Like a very high power, reliable, fucking metal case, badass work phone. Instead, I gotta get the S14 or whatever. Like, Microsoft has the historical clout to make a product movement happen. They just never have the balls to actually do it. Yeah, Maximo, it really just has gone to shit. Kind of ever since I opened my big fat mouth about how the GUIs all seem to be just the way I wanted them. But okay. So there's more logic behind my proposed strategy for Microsoft than just marketability and customer satisfaction and performance. It's also to address the cause of what you're talking about, which is file infiltration hacking. And it's based on a theory that's, it can be adapted to, right? But not economically. And that theory is that the less pathways you have in and out of a computer, or a phone, for instance, they're computers now, the less different types of pathways you have, the more secure you are. And the more you can have a heuristic response program focus on those pathways, on that pathway, without affecting performance. So there's always a compromise between your heuristics and overall system performance. And if you're going to have a computer that's designed to do 5 different fucking things, and the user only winds up doing 1 or 2 of those things, then you've unnecessarily bogged that computer down and reduced its security capabilities for the sake of performance that never needed to be there to begin with. Make sense? So if I, case in point, I built gaming computers, and I built business servers. If I built a gaming computer, I didn't allow, I would go in, I would disable remote access service configuration, I would disable remote registry, I would disable remote desktop, I would disable fucking telephony, like every fucking thing that computer user did not need to do his games, I would disable it. No longer a part of Windows. And my computers went fast, man, fast. And I would never, once my configuration went on your computer, I would never have to get called back to get rid of a virus for you. You know? Yeah, I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. I think my advice should be worth money to somebody, but yet I can't seem to get myself paid beyond, like, you know, I can afford a stick to walk with. Like, that's about it, you know? Fuck. Lord knows the United States government needed my advice. But, like, okay. When I was homeless, I would go into a coffee shop and see a rich business guy with a laptop and say, I bet you I can make that laptop go 6 times faster. I'd say 5 times faster. And I'd say, I normally charge $60 for 1 hour of tech. But I'm currently homeless and living out of my car, so I don't consider myself capable of you know, covering a proper business transaction. So that's what I got. Take it or leave it. If I don't make it go 5 times faster, don't pay me. I always got paid. Now, most of the time it was easy. Most of the time, you'd look right in their taskbar and you'd see McAfee and Norton and Kaspersky and Adaware and blah 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 blah. Oh my God, what the fuck are you doing with your computer? Oh my God. Oh, you're gonna love me. I'd often get tips because people would say, I was about to go have to buy a new computer. This thing was getting so slow. No. The only thing slowing it down was you, man. Okay, I really have to adjust the camera, which means I need to get up. And, like, where's my cane? Damn it. Okay. First, we lift the legs, and we curl into a ball, and we hurl the ball forward. Nope, not quite. Then we hurl the ball forward. Okay. Step 1 complete. I'm now leaning forward. Up. Okay. This is the way we stand. Alright, there we are. We can see the fish again. Yay. Anyways. So yeah, that was how I worked my way out of homelessness. Wound up getting an apartment. Wound up losing that apartment after being ripped off. Not because I got ripped off, but because I had gotten ripped off, I didn't have the money to get a new fucking apartment. My mom actually bailed me out at that point. God rest her soul. See, I had been hired by Data Star, or was a subcontractor for Data Star International. And what I was doing was installing credit card machines at every single Office Depot in the central Louisiana area. So I was in New Roads, I was in Lafayette, I was in Gonzales, Hammond. I think I did 8 total Office Depots. And didn't have any problems. Successfully every time. And I get a notice in the mail, they're filing for bankruptcy. So I didn't get paid a fucking dime. Spent all that gas money driving all over fucking Kingdom Come. Now he's starting to worry me again. I better move that camera closer. You okay, little guy? Come on, really? Oh. Yeah, they filed for bankruptcy, and it was basically a notice that told me how much I wasn't going to get paid. And that was, I think, $1,758. That was 2 weeks worth of work. Plus mileage. Tatsuki likes the flakes, but I think he likes the pellets better. Michita, come on, baby. Yeah, and it was that same exact time period that the landlord told me I couldn't keep my wrecked Integra there. So I had to give away my Integra, which I had about 12 grand into, to a junkyard for $365. And, you know, it was wrecked and it had its problems, and basically all it was worth was the shit I could cannibalize from it. But I didn't even get the chance to do that. I didn't get the chance to pull out my motor. I missed that fucking car too, man. That was like a poor man's NSX right there. That was a great car. Oh, fuck.
Hydrogen bomb test, its biggest nuclear test yet. And tonight, Kim Jong-un remains defiant. North Korea may be getting ready to test another ballistic missile just in the next few days. That's according to South Korea. The response from the United States tonight, enough is enough.
His abusive use of missiles and his nuclear threats show that he is begging for war. We have kicked the can down the road long enough. There is no more road left.
UN Ambassador Nikki Haley there. She says stronger sanctions are needed. However, President Trump says tonight all options are on the table and wouldn't rule out a military attack yesterday.
Mr. President, will you attack North Korea?
We'll see. Defense Secretary James Mattis, he spelled it out in more detail with this warning.
Any threat to the United States or its territories, including Guam, or our allies, will be met with a massive military response, a response both effective and overwhelming.
So where does this stand tonight? Is North Korea really begging for war? CNN's Will Ripley is in Japan. He just returned from North Korea, his 14th trip there. So, Will, does the administration's tough talk scare North Korea, from your experience, or embolden them?
I would say it's the second, Kate. They are emboldened and, in fact, motivated to work even harder to develop their weapons program as quickly as possible. That was the message reiterated to me repeatedly by North Korean officials last week. And if you look at their actions, they really are trying to send a message to the United States and its allies. They launched an intermediate-range missile over Japan's northern island. Then they put out an editorial saying that the U.S. needs to rethink its policy of refusing to acknowledge North Korea as a nuclear power. Then over the weekend, those images of Kim Jong-un standing in front of a miniaturized nuclear warhead, a hydrogen bomb that they say they can put in an ICBM. A few hours later, they test said hydrogen bomb, the biggest underground nuclear test North Korea has ever conducted, the biggest underground nuclear test ever registered by the seismologists who detect this kind of activity. And now indications, according to South Korean lawmakers, that North Korea is preparing to launch yet another ballistic missile. It could be from a submarine, it could be another mid-range missile, or it could be the most provocative intercontinental ballistic missile, and it could happen in a matter of days. North Korea has a big national holiday coming up on Saturday. So, Kate, they are not afraid. They are absolutely emboldened, and this messaging from Ambassador Nikki Haley at the UN is not going to change the North Korean calculus, that these weapons remain their best and only leverage with the international community, that they believe will someday give them respect, a seat at the table, perhaps more normalized relations or better economic activity. It seems counterintuitive, but North Korea thinks that these weapons are all they have when they're up against an adversary like the U.S. that is much more powerful, much more wealthy, much more influential, but for the time being, continuing to try to pressure the country through other means to get rid of their weapons, and I don't think they'll back down.
Yeah, the state of things right now, it sure seems to be getting worse rather than better for all sides. Great to see you, Will. Thank you. So Michelle Kaczynski's out right now at the State Department for this side, an important side of this very important story. Michelle, in the midst of all of this, President Trump has been talking to allies, the leaders of South Korea, Japan, and Germany. The State Department spokesperson today said the preferred approach for North Korea is still diplomacy, but still no word directly from the Secretary of State since this test. What are you hearing tonight?
Yeah, and you look at this, we've heard plenty from the president in tweets, from the Secretary of Defense, today from the U.S.'s ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley. But the one voice we have not heard, even to just lend his thoughts on this, is the Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson. And today the State Department did put out some lines saying that he did participate remotely in the president's national security meeting yesterday. He did have a call with South Korea, but there was no additional detail on that. And I remember about a week ago when North Korea launched that missile that flew over Japan, it wasn't until a day later that we heard from the State Department. It was a readout of phone calls, one of which we had already heard about from South Korea a day prior. The Russians also had said that they had a call with Tillerson, but we had no detail from the State Department. So this is what we see at times. Even when something very significant happens, the State Department will sometimes just refer back to whatever statement the White House has already put out. For whatever reason, Secretary of State Tillerson not feeling it necessary to lend his voice on this, at least not yet, Kate.
The one voice that is speaking, though, loudly and clearly, via Twitter at least, is the President of the United States. That's one that I guess everyone needs to listen to at this moment. Michelle, thank you so much. Great to see you. Out front with me now, Gordon Chang, author of Nuclear Showdown, North Korea Takes on the World. Ambassador James Woolsey is here. He served as CIA director under President Bill Clinton and also served as a senior advisor to the Trump campaign. And also with us, retired Major General James Spider Mark. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming in. I really appreciate it. Amazing things are turning. It looks like things just keep getting worse rather than better, as we were discussing. Gordon, Nikki Haley, when she said today that North Korea is begging for war.
No.
Are they?
No. You know, one is. What I know is that Kim Jong-un starts a chain of events that leads to war. So, for instance, when he's confident in his arsenal, he could use it to blackmail the United States, to break our mutual defense treaty with South Korea, get our 28,500 troops off the peninsula, and then go for what is the core goal of the Kim regime, which is to take over South Korea. There's so much room for miscalculation there, and that's when the risk of war becomes unacceptably high.
Well, in general, the defense secretary said just yesterday that any threat would be met with a massive military response, but it is also often said that there's no good military option. But has it now come to a point that it is clear that the non-military options have failed?
No, I think there still remains options, diplomatic, economic options that need to be undertaken, and that's what the discussion is all about. The fact that there are lousy military options because Seoul would be punished, it would be catastrophic, doesn't mean that the military would not be used. But let me be clear, my understanding of this is that clearly the United States would not be provocative, they would not take the initial step. Kim would have to launch something, be provocative against the United States and its territories for the United States to respond. And as Secretary Mattis indicated, it would not be a pinprick type of an attack. It would be very punishing. It would ultimately end with the Kim regime being ousted. His elites would feel threatened. But that doesn't mean that the United States is covetous of the North Korean territory. I think the one Korean policy is off the table. Denuclearization of the peninsula is off the table. Kim is a new power. We need to acknowledge that, so we've got to work desperately, very strongly, but confidently, diplomatically, and economically.
Words and actions are, I mean, they're everything here, but words, when you're talking about a nuclear threat, they seem to matter, Ambassador. And the words that we've heard from the president on this, at least in part, are on Twitter, really, is where we're hearing a lot of the response. And he wrote this in part. He wrote, South Korea is finding, as I have told them, that their talk of appeasement with North Korea will not work. They only understand one thing. It appears he's directing his anger, his frustration at an ally. Does it help?
In part, appeasement's a tough word because it did not work well for Neville Chamberlain and the British, for put it mildly. I think that the real problem here is that the North Koreans have an ace in the hole. We know that they can detonate a nuclear weapon in a satellite. It's not hard to do. A small one is fine. That produces a lot of electromagnetic pulses down into the area underneath where the satellite was. That, in turn, can destroy a large areas of electronics in its electrical grid system. And it doesn't
hear that from the administration, though. Do you know that they're concerned about this?
I know that Bill Graham is the chairman of the Electromagnetic Pulse Commission, which I'm an advisor to. And Bill has heard that there was a statement made by a senior Obama administration official during the Obama administration to a senior military officer that it was just our policy not to get into this electromagnetic pulse stuff at all. Not wanting to look as if something was being left undone. And I think that the two senior officials in the Defense Department who are in the policy office and have responsibility in this area are both holdovers from the Obama administration.
So, General Spider, on this, what do you make of it? That sounds terrifying, what the ambassador is laying out.
Yeah, Ambassador Woolsey is absolutely spot on. What we saw with the ICBM test, let's put on the table that there might have been some debate about the capabilities of the two ICBM tests that have taken place. But it doesn't really matter, as the ambassador indicated, if you can put a miniaturized nuke on top of one of those and it launched to altitude, it was in space, and it was generally over the southern part of the peninsula, that part of East Asia, you would have a devastating type of a result in Tokyo, in Seoul, the rest of the peninsula. There would be fallout, obviously, in North Korea, which fallout in terms of electronic blackout that would occur. That's not as significant a problem in the North because of their rather immature infrastructure right now. But that's a legitimate concern. So if you're going to debate whether there was an ICBM test that would really work, let's go down the path Ambassador Woolsey just talked about, and that is equally troublesome.
Well, Gordon, another element, a huge element of all of this, and in the response, is China. And another statement coming from President Trump. He tweeted out that the United States is considering, in addition to other options, stopping all trade with any country doing business with North Korea. That's clearly directed at China. Who else would it be really directed at? China's also a major, not only the trading partner with North Korea, it's a major trading partner, of course, of the United States. Can and would the United States
Trump don't
use
care.
that as policy break off trade with China?
We're not gonna
Russia
go to
hopes
zero
so.
from $650
So Trump will
billion
do.
a year. But what could happen, though, is, for instance, that Chinese banks that have been money laundering for the North Koreans, such as Bank of China, which was named in a 2016 UN report, the administration could declare it a primary money laundering concern, and therefore just sort of sever it from all its dollar accounts.
Owned by the Communist Party, not the government of China.
That could very well occur. And of course, enterprises that have been selling nuclear weapons materials to the North Koreans,
Owned privately
those
by
probably
members of the
will
Communist
not be
Party.
permitted to trade with the U.S. You know, we saw Secretary Mnuchin yesterday say that he's going to put together a sanctions package to sort of give effect to President Trump's tweet. And also this morning, we had Ambassador Haley mention before the Security Council that this is something that is on the U.S. agenda. So they're hardening that into policy. And by the way, just a few hours ago, the North Koreans did make a reference to an electromagnetic pulse attack. So this is something that are actually thinking about.
This morning, New York Times.
Ambassador, you've got Kim Jong-un saying that they're preparing basically, you've got South Korea saying that Kim Jong-un is preparing for another missile launch, maybe later this week. You've got President Trump firing off on Twitter and throwing out these threats. Some of them, many folks think, are empty threats, especially when you're talking about China. How great is the chance, the risk, the threat for a miscalculation on either side right now?
I'm afraid it's fairly substantial. This is the most worrisome international situation I can remember during the Cold War years on.
To say the least, you've seen a lot.
Yeah, I've seen a few years ago, going back to the early 60s. And I think that we've got to be really careful here and make sure that if a decision is made to use force, especially, or do anything very definitive, that it's made with the President in consultation with the National Security Council staff and members, sitting around talking about options, looking at this, looking at that. We don't need an impetuous tweet that says, okay, here's what we're going to do. We need care and precision and time, and what we did not have, by the way, during the Tonkin Gulf resolution, because of the Vietnam War in '62, there was a mistake on the second supposed launch against our destroyers. It didn't occur.
So,
and we went to war,
right.
and I was, for 6 months, I was the head of essentially the anti-war movement at Yale. A lot of us were very fed up with the Johnson administration and the way it was handling things.
So, to say the least on this one, we all have to wait and see from North Korea, from what's going to come from North Korea, and what, maybe on Twitter, maybe elsewhere, what we hear from President Trump on this one as well. Ambassador, great to see you. Gordon, always great to see you. General, thank you so much.
Thank you, Kate.
Out front next.
I'm working on the fish tanks, no matter how bad my back hurts. Holy shit. Okay, definitely need to go with it. Ooh. Oh. Okay. Oh, of course, this thing's full of business. Alright. What?
President Trump, Secretary of Defense Jim Mattis, and Ambassador to the UN Nikki Haley each spoke out about North Korea and the leader.
Mr. President, will you attack North Korea? We have many military options, and the President wanted to be briefed on each one of them. Any threat to the United States or its territories, including Guam, or our allies, will be met with a massive military response, a response both effective and overwhelming. We are not looking to the total annihilation of a country, namely North Korea. But as I said, we have many options to do so.
To the members of the Security Council, I must say, enough is enough. We have taken an incremental approach, and despite the best of intentions, it has not worked. His abusive use of missiles and his nuclear threats show that he is begging for war.
Because we'll get to those comments in a minute. Those are the comments that were choreographed and the sort of comments you would expect during this sort of crisis. But what the diplomatic world was talking about, certainly what our allies in South Korea are talking about this morning, were the attacks the President of the United States made on the South Koreans, suggesting that they were appeasing the North Koreans, and also talking about inexplicably starting a trade war with the South Koreans at the very moment that they are at risk of an all-out hot war that could cost millions of lives on the peninsula. Sort through that for us.
We've designed a national security process which is designed to make sure something like this doesn't happen. It's not working. This is all focused on collaborating and cooperating with South Korea against North Korea. One of North Korea's principal strategic aims is to split the United States from South Korea.
But this would be, just for
It's North Korea that's hell-bent on developing a large nuclear arsenal with missiles able to deliver those nuclear weapons around the world.
Well, you're speaking logically, but David Ignatius, how can you be adopting the common stance when you're the President of the United States this weekend actually accusing the South Koreans of appeasement, and at the same time, on a completely different point, talking about a nationalistic trade war with this company and with this country that's literally on the cutting edge of what could be a nuclear confrontation? Have you heard any explanation of the President's words this weekend that could legitimize what he said, or at least begin to explain his thought process?
No, Joe, I think this is a president who's frustrated, who's angry at allies, who's angry really at the failure of his own policy. We have to remember that in moving last weekend to test, we believe, a hydrogen bomb to significantly escalate the confrontation between the United States and North Korea, Kim Jong-un rebuffed a very direct diplomatic opening from the United States, from the President himself, and from Secretary of State Tillerson, in effect inviting them into negotiations, crediting them for being restrained over the last several weeks prior to the test in not making additional tests. And Kim Jong-un has blown right through that. The scenario the U.S. was carefully drafting, State Department officials were describing in private, in detail, where they thought this was going. Last weekend shattered that. So the President, I think, is now scrambling to, he always reacts impulsively, I think, to new developments. He had a long conversation Monday night, South Korean time, with South Korean President Moon. So the rhetoric of appeasement, the threats of trade war, I think, will put in a separate category. And there's now intensive discussion, I'm told, behind the scenes about new diplomatic efforts centering on China, centering on a much tougher effort by China and the United Nations to increase pressure. So far, we have to say the effect of pressure has only been to make North Korea rush faster towards its nuclear capability, and the truth is, they are now a nuclear state.
So, Richard, David sort of led me to my question to you, which is this comment yesterday from Nikki Haley at the UN, where she said the time for half measures is over, enough is enough. What is left to do that hasn't been done over the last decade in terms of sanctions? Nobody wants to go to the military outfit if you've done almost all you can in terms of sanctions. What's left somewhere in the middle there that hasn't been tried? And if it hasn't been, why hasn't it been tried over 10 years?
The short answer is not a lot is left. You can try to cut down everything going in physically, all the oil, and North Korea's already begun to stockpile oil. You can try to cut off every financial flow. But I think the history of sanctions...
What are you going to do? Tell the Russians not to do business with North Korea?
Black markets, there's gray markets. North Korea also is the most closed society in the world. They wanted to have their people starve.
Fucking people can't even bring themselves to talk about Russia, let alone solve problems involving Russia.
Is it a military response or nothing?
I think we're down to a binary choice. At some point, things get simple, and now it's down to a binary choice. Either we learn to manage or live with a North Korea that has nuclear weapons and missiles, and that's a combination of deterrence, missile defense. We add military forces to the region. Maybe we say we'll use military force if they get a missile ready to launch, or we launch, as H.R. McMaster, the National Security Advisor, was talking about, a preventive strike. We simply say this has reached an intolerable point, and when we use words like intolerable or unacceptable, we're going to do something. Obviously, that
blah 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 blah. None of you fucking people have a clue. And frankly, neither does McMaster, any of those old guys, if they think that North Korea gives a shit about our threats. See, it's not about you, you fucking egomaniacs. This has nothing to do with the United States and North Korea. This is about the Horde's opportunity to get us the fuck out of the way so it can take over the world. Okay? All of it. All the world. All the big circle map. So the diplomatic approach here doesn't need to be like we're the great peacekeepers of the world. Okay. We need to acknowledge our exact place as the stumbling block to horde domination. Because that includes horde domination of, guess what? The Korean Peninsula. And instead of the path that he is choosing in assisting our demise for a subjugative role, Mr. Kim Jong-un could be probably the most legendary, greatest leader of modern times in that region, let alone on the Korean Peninsula, if he was the one to at last make peace with the West. And benefit from it too. Because then even the haters wouldn't be able to hate. You know, I'm looking at the clownfish now. His breathing is still kind of worrisome. So I guess we're not out of the woods yet. Alright. Turn on the camera, because I'm about to attempt to rearrange Mai's living space. Hopefully she won't come over here and bite me. Oh gosh, I need your plate, dude. Alright. That's just gonna go right there to dry out. So what I've done is basically had those other plates in there so they would have time to bond and be near each other while Mai hogged her sleeping space. So now hopefully what's going to happen is they're going to start spending more time in the pot together. And just to help that along, time to feed. Come on, Maya. Maya. There you go, baby. Hey, little guy. Oh, fuck. I really need him to eat more. Huh. Yeah. Coincidence. All right. Apparently he's just tired. I wonder if there's anything I can do about the image there. Hold on. Maybe this would work better. No? No? Oh, there we go. Sweet. Well, that didn't work. Well, not going to leave him like this too much longer. I just want to make sure he's getting good sleep. I think he's still having a little bit of trouble. Judging from how he looked better a little while ago, and then he started kind of going up to the surface. Most clownfish his age will sleep right up there at the surface if they don't have something to host to. So they'll be like the territories in the tank when they're growing out will all be claimed by the most dominant fish, so all the good spots will be claimed, right? But then you'll have some fish most of the rest of the fish, basically, it's like up in the corners and around the edges. It's all kind of floating up on their sides like that. And if you didn't know any better, you'd think they were dying. But he was just getting fatigued, it looked like to me. So now he's just got to get used to the night lights and the ambient lights and realize when his sleep schedule is. And maybe eventually Toski will stop smacking him in the face. And now I'm in a world of shit. My back's all inflamed even more. Now I'm getting hungry. That sucks. Oh, and I just got... Okay, so a couple days ago, or was it yesterday, when that song started playing, that was on a random side uploading channel on a news program, and I didn't fucking mean for there to be a song on here. So I got a copyright strike. And now apparently they get to collect ad revenue on my whole video because of a few seconds of a song. That's what it told me. So they get to run ads on my video. They get to run ads on my video. How the fuck did they get to run ads on my video? It's a fucking many hours long, and they got less than a minute of a song. But I got a copyright claim on it. I play anime and watch guitar. I mean, I play guitar and watch anime. One of the two. But as you know, I am a dork. So. We have 3,113 subscribers. And I wish more of them would join us for the live broadcasts and chat, hang out. So if you're listening to this, try to keep an eye out for the live streams and come chat and hang out with us. We don't bite much. Anyway. morning, Joe's sitting there talking about how Trump knows he's not going to be president much longer, and he's just trying to get a network audience base so you can watch Trump TV and make millions of dollars off of that. Interesting theory, but a bit too optimistic if you ask me. If only it were that simple.
Russia's President Vladimir Putin has warned of a global catastrophe if military tensions with North Korea continue to increase. Mr. Putin also dismissed the value of imposing further sanctions on Pyongyang, saying the country's leadership would rather eat grass than abandon its nuclear program. Meanwhile, South Korea has been holding more live fire drills and has been staging a major naval exercise off the country's east coast. The South Korean commander said the North's forces would be buried at sea in the event of a further provocation. The country's president says he is open to dialogue with the North, but now is not the time for talks. China, the North's main ally, is still urging caution and has called for a return to negotiations. Our correspondent John Sudworth is in Dandong on the border between China and North Korea.
The Chinese city of Dandong is a very good place to contemplate China's position in the North Korean nuclear crisis. If we pan across the river, you can see just how close the two countries are at this point. They are connected by that iron bridge behind me, and almost all of North Korea's trade in goods, as well as its vital crude oil supply, flows across this border. You can see an antiquated North Korean power station on the other side there, a sign of just how dilapidated its energy infrastructure is. Donald Trump's argument, of course, is that China could, if it wanted to, simply force North Korea into submission by turning off this lifeline. But when you look at this proximity, you can see why the Chinese leadership see things very differently indeed. Their fear is that pushing North Korea towards regime collapse will bring chaos and instability, factional infighting, possibly even war, right up against this border. And that is why Beijing is insisting that it will not contemplate a total trade embargo, it will not contemplate talk of military options. All it wants to see is a return to dialogue, and that has been its position all along.
John Sudworth, well, we can get more on the comments from President Putin, who's speaking in China this morning. We can join our Moscow correspondent, Sarah Rainsford. Sarah, Vladimir Putin has, like China, dismissed putting further sanctions on North Korea. What is Moscow's view of what would be the way forward?
It has, that's right. Russia's position quite similar to that of China. In fact, Russia and China have put forward a roadmap for resolving the crisis on the Korean Peninsula. And President Putin has made clear that whilst Russia sees the latest nuclear test by North Korea as provocative, as he put it, and he's condemned those, he doesn't think that sanctions are the way forward. In fact, he said that the North Korean leadership would prefer to eat grass than to end their nuclear program. So sanctions, he said, were a dead-end road, but also he was very strong, Mr. Putin was very strong in terms of what he called the military hysteria that he said was being whipped up over the crisis on the Korean Peninsula, saying that that was a road to nowhere, that this kind of rhetoric needs to end, and that all sides need to return to the negotiation table. Now, as Russia sees it, that means all sides, including Pyongyang. It's like China, pushing for a return to talks, and says the only way to resolve this crisis is through diplomacy. But it's difficult at this point to know exactly what influence Russia can bring to bear on the situation. Certainly it has very important historic ties with Pyongyang, but in terms of economic leverage or political leverage even, it's difficult at this point to know how much pressure Russia can actually exert on North Korea.
Thank you very much, Sarah.
How nice of them to mention that.
I don't think I ever met him. Now, it's possible that I walked into a room and he was sitting there, but I don't think I ever met him. I didn't talk to him ever, and he thought it was a joke. The other person said he...
How does anyone fucking watch Mark Dice? How does anyone bother watching Mark fucking Dice? What a douchebag. He got a whole bunch of computers set up to give himself a whole bunch of fake views.
Kids, excuse me.
Now to a CNN exclusive. We're getting our first look at the letter former President Obama left for President Trump as he left the Oval Office in January. Former President Obama leaving several pieces of advice for his successor. Has President Trump listened? Let's first listen to what President Trump said about receiving that letter.
Oval Office and found this beautiful letter from President Obama. We will cherish that. We will keep that. And we won't even tell the press what's in that letter.
All right, let's discuss all this with senior political commentators Jack Kingston and Bakari Sellers. Good morning to you, gentlemen. Bakari, let's start with you. And this letter hits on three different pieces of advice, which we'll drill down on in a moment. But it starts with congratulations. It ends by saying, know that we stand ready to help in any ways which we can. Now let's turn back the clock a little bit. Donald Trump's fuel, his rise in politics built on questioning Barack Obama's birthplace, his campaign based on wiping away his legacy. How difficult do you think this letter was to write, Bakari?
I don't think it was difficult at all for the president, the 44th president of the United States. What we saw during the transition process was a man who held the office in great esteem, in high esteem. And no matter who the president-elect was at the time, whether or not it was Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump, he wanted to make sure that he was doing his job as an outgoing president. And what we see is something that many of us miss. When you read the letter, you see someone who's very thoughtful, someone who's very deliberate, someone who set aside partisan politics and just upheld the fundamental tenets of our democracy.
Yeah, I bet that's something, actually.
Of the presidency. And so I was very pleased. I will say this, that Barack Obama is a better man than I. Somebody who attacks your heritage that way and questions your birth. You then sit down and you shake his hand and you say you want to make sure that he can be the best possible president. So my hat's off to the 44th president.
And to the transition of power. Jack, let's touch on these pieces of advice. First, talk about how they both have been blessed. It's up to us to do everything we can to build more ladders of success for every child and family that's willing to work hard. Second, touches on American leadership in this world and how it is indispensable, perhaps noting at the isolationist talk of the campaign. And thirdly, Jack, we are just temporary occupants of the office. Warns the president to guard the traditions of rule of law, separation of powers, equal protection, and civil liberties. Which, if any, of these pieces of advice has President Trump followed in office?
Well, actually, I'm glad that he's not listening to Barack Obama's interpretation of rule of law, because all I can think about is Lois Lerner and the IRS scandal. I think about them calling James Rosen, the Fox reporter, a flight risk and surveilling him illegally. I think about Hillary Clinton's pay-for-place shenanigans at the State Department under Barack Obama, and I think of Fast and Furious. So if that's the rule of law under Barack Obama, I'm glad that President Trump is not listening to it.
Does firing the acting FBI director for not killing the Russia investigation fall under protecting the rule of law, Jack?
Well, number one, the president can fire anybody at any time, as you know, and number two, we don't know why he...
And yeah, it's Obama's fault that Republican organizations disproportionately cheat on their fucking taxes. I mean, because basically it's a story made out of nothing based on a statistic. Statistics show you fuckers cheat. It's not the Obama administration's fault that the IRS investigated you more. It's your fault for being more fucking crooked.
Fired Comey based on that speculation. We do know based on the Rosenstein letter why he fired him, because of his incompetence, and apparently now we know that he was lying under oath when he said he did not write the conclusion that Hillary Clinton was innocent before the investigation. We now have evidence that shows that he did not have something like 17 eyewitnesses had not been interviewed when he started drafting the letter saying that she was innocent. So
we do know this, Bakari. We know that there was a letter that was not published from the president and Stephen Miller citing that they were firing James Comey because he would not publicly clear the president to say he was not under investigation. When I mentioned those three pieces of advice, rule of law is one, separation of powers is another, and John McCain took to the Washington Post to warn the president, to tell him directly that senators do not work for him. Do you think he's following the advice laid out in this letter?
Well, I think you regardless of what Jack Kingston says or the talking points that many times we hear on Fox News, the president was 8 years scandal-free. He and his entire family. And so what we're seeing...
Just because you make shit up doesn't mean it's a scandal. It ain't gonna make it in the fucking history books. It ain't gonna make it anywhere but fucking Fox News in your stupid fucking face.
Now, if we go to the heart of this letter, Harris laid out some very practical... He laid out some very practical guidelines that would guide not just a Republican president, but a Democratic president as well, and everybody in between. The answer to your question is I'm not sure that Donald Trump has read the letter, and if he has read the letter, it's apparent he hasn't taken that to heart. We've had 8 months where this White House has been consumed with scandal and palace intrigue, and this is exactly what we did not have.
Jack, hang on a sec. I do have to say that CNN reporting suggests he shows this to several visitors to the Oval Office, is very proud and cherishes this letter. I want to ask you about the first piece of advice, though. He says, it's up to us to do everything we can to build more ladders of success for every child and family that's willing to work hard. It's been reported also by Politico that if President Trump kills the Dreamers program, that will be the one thing that gets President Obama to speak out against Trump on Facebook and perhaps on Twitter. Was he talking in that first bit of advice about the Dreamers Act?
I don't know, because when we talk about rule of law and separation of power, certainly that would mean that executive orders should not be necessary, that you should let the legislative branch come up with major changes in the law of immigration. As you know, there are 9 attorneys general right now who are suing the Department of Justice because of the illegal Dreamers Act and DACA deferrals that President Obama did. So if we're talking about rule of law, that's, you got to let the legislative branch do the law
Long way to go before they solve that dreamer situation for those 800,000 here in this country. Jack Kingston, Bakari Sellers, thank you both.
What the fuck is Fast and Furious? Like, I understand, you know, that asshole wants people to suffer for the fucking mistakes of their parents. He wants children to be fucking deported. Okay, fine, whatever. What the fuck is Fast and Furious? I don't even know what the hell that is. It's a movie. You're gonna name a fucking scandal, a so-called scandal, after a movie? Really? Anybody? Anybody know what the hell Fast and Furious is supposed to be about? I've clearly forgotten.
Welcome back. We have some major news out of Washington to share with you. The Justice Department has revealed it found zero evidence that former President Barack Obama ever wiretapped Trump Tower, as President Trump once claimed. In a filing released last night, the DOJ writes both FBI and NSC confirmed that they have no records related to wiretaps as described by the March 4th, 2017 tweets. Those tweets back in March included these accusations. Terrible. Just found out that Obama had my wires tapped in Trump Tower just before the victory. Nothing found. This is McCarthyism. And how low has President Obama gone to tap my phones during the very sacred election process? This is Nixon/Watergate. Bad or sick guy. Now, the White House has never said what President Trump was basing these unfounded claims on, only that the president was confident an investigation would vindicate him. Now to some other breaking news involving Russia and the diplomatic feud between the U.S. and Russia that at this hour appears to be intensifying. The Russian annex in Washington, D.C. is one of 3 Russian...
It's been my experience that despite people's claim that CNN is somehow liberal biased, that they're really just not. And that if anything actually comes from Fox News and is factual, they will pick it up. So if there's a fucking scandal and CNN doesn't even cover it, it's because it's basically just something that Fox News has completely fabricated, typically with the help of Russian intelligence. And by the way, if you want to know why Obama was investigating right-wing activist groups, because of their fucking ties to Russia. Anyway.
Facilities, the U.S. announced it is closing, and a Russian official tells CNN all of the Russians have left this D.C. annex. He says all documents have been moved to the Russian embassy, also in D.C. American officials have been seen going in and out of the annex. Today, we are told they are conducting some kind of search there. I want to bring in CNN contributor Jill Doherty from Moscow. This all has the appearance, Jill, of an escalation. What are you hearing from the Kremlin?
Yeah, it definitely does. In fact, just within the last hour or so, the Russian Foreign Ministry has posted on its Facebook page video, and that video shows how the Americans came in and carried out this inspection. You see video of a car coming in, and then an American apparently walking into rooms, saying hello, looking around. And then there's another piece of video that shows one of the Americans on a ladder climbing up and looking into a crawl space. Now, all of this was done apparently with the Russian officials in place and going around witnessing what they had done. But it seems obvious, Anna, that the Russians are probably beginning to build, you could almost call it a legal case to make their argument, which they're very vehement about, that this is a violation of international law, and they even say a violation of American law. We'll have to see exactly what they're pointing to there. But they are, you can definitely say, furious. And they also mention out in San Francisco at that consulate, one of the biggest consulates that Russia has in the United States, that also had to be vacated, and they say there was some type of inspection at that as well. They say that it was being rummaged by the FBI. So we don't know what steps they might take in response, but Russia is saying it reserves that right to take a reaction, a retaliatory gesture against the United States for what is happening.
And the United States says what they're doing is a retaliatory gesture for what the Russians did, which kicked out half of the personnel that was in Russia. So back and forth, here we go. The President Trump, has in the past said a lot of glowing things about Russian Vladimir Putin. He has seemingly been unwilling to criticize him, yet this administration now closing the Russian facilities here in the U.S. How is this playing in Russia with ordinary Russians?
Well, let's start with the government first. I think the government is trying to figure out how do you manage this, and they've been quite overt in saying these actions completely negate what the president has been saying, which is we want better relations. I don't think at this point, all of this immediate stuff happened on a Friday, and now it's Saturday, almost midnight. So there hasn't been a lot of reaction from average Russians. I think you'll probably get that next week. Now, the government certainly is furious, and as I said, appears to be making that case to whom it's not at this point, but certainly to the world, that they believe this is completely illegal and will lead to a worsening, if you can imagine that already, of U.S.-Russian relations.
So do you see this as moves designed to intentionally hurt how Russia and the U.S. operate in each other's countries, or are they more symbolic?
The Russians are saying that these actions were taken deliberately to damage relations with Russia. They argue that the sanctions, the actions by President Obama, right at the end of his presidency, in which this kind of all started when he kicked out 35 diplomats and they had 2 compounds that were taken over. They say that that was done by the Obama administration to damage relations and also to damage the chances that Trump, incoming president, would have to improve relations. So that, and in the same breath,
after they invaded Europe and attacked our elections,
of the United States, as they took this action on Thursday and Friday, said, we're doing this to try to stop this cycle of tit for tat. I don't think the Russians believe that, but it's certainly not stopping the cycle. In fact, the cycle looks like it is going to go on. We have to wait till we see what President Putin wants to do about this. He hasn't weighed in particularly. It's really been the foreign ministry. But that will be a very important step to decide, to see what he decides to do.
Right. It almost seems like each side wants to say, we have the last word. We want to have the last word in all this. Jill Doherty, thank you very much for your reporting. Still to come here.
Well, anyways, I think about to call it a broadcast and just put the microphone on mute and leave them up there so I can keep watching them. So, whoever is still enjoying watching them, let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to end the stream. I can use this program and still, you know, get a better view of them without crouching down there. So, there's not a whole lot of point in me turning it off. Y'all got some better shit to do. Crowds are gathering outside of the White House to protest the DACA thing.
Protesters are also gathering not far from where Joe is at the White House, so let's go for Jeremy Diamond. They're there because they know this reporting that the president is going to end DACA. What are they saying?
That's right. Well, these protesters have just begun to gather here right outside the White House. Initially, they weren't sure that they'd be able to get this close to the White House, but they are here now. There's perhaps about 200 people out here already, and many of these people are from various different groups, about a dozen different organizations, here to voice their discontent with the president's upcoming decision, the decision that we're expected to get from Jeff Sessions in about an hour, that he plans to effectively end DACA, at least phase it out for a time period, and perhaps give Congress a chance to act. But these protesters here certainly unhappy with that decision, saying that the people united will never be defeated. Those are some of the slogans that they are chanting. Some people here are actually dreamers themselves, and we're expecting a group of them to come here soon. Those dreamers actually on a hunger strike for the next several days to protest this president's decision. Bobby?
Jeremy Diamond at the White House, thank you so much. We'll keep an eye on that protest. Let's talk about the big picture here around this DACA decision that is imminent. Joining us now, CNN political commentators Angela Ryan, Ben Ferguson. Betsy Woodruff is also here, politics reporter for the Daily Beast. So, Betsy, let me just get your take on this new reporting from our Jeff Zeleny that there's been a, quote, tug of war inside the White House on this one, and that, quote, no one is happy with the outcome, including the president. So he's punting this to Jeff Sessions to make the announcement, but I don't understand why then the urgency from the president. Yes, it's the pending lawsuit from the state's attorneys general, but if the president isn't keen on this, if it's not a priority, why do it and face backlash from some of your fellow big-name Republican leaders?
Regardless of what the president decided to do, he would face extraordinary criticism, either from more moderate, mainstream Republicans on Capitol Hill, as well as the business community, or from his base. If there's one thing we know about President Trump, it's that he's highly sensitive to what the people who voted for him want. And remember, one thing that I cannot overstate.
The people that voted for him don't even know what the fuck they want. All they can do is repeat the last thing they were told. Unless you're talking about the fucking Russians, no, he's not doing what the people want. Alright, so anyways, I'm going to leave the stream up for Clownfish watching, but I need need to put the microphone on mute and put something entertaining on it because my back is fucking killing me and I just don't know what to do with myself. So. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back later to end the broadcast whenever I decide to end the broadcast. Blah, 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 pudding pops. Peace. For now. Yeah. Thanks, Max. Me too. looks like they're doing just fine. Let me go ahead and shut this thing down. Y'all have a good one. Thanks for joining me. Please don't forget to click the like button and make sure you're subscribed. Peace.
Thank you.